in. All right. Waiting here. Okay, I believe we're live.
All right, welcome everybody. We're back for MasterClass number 9. Now we have a special one here for you. If you've ever heard of the Smith Maneuver, we got the man himself. And if you want to know about how to decrease tax, generate larger tax returns, knock years off your mortgage, maybe build a stronger financial portfolio, then you're in the right spot. Welcome here. We got a group of experts. Let's take a few seconds, go around the room, introduce ourselves, and then most importantly, get into the meat and bones of this thing. Zach, who are you? Why are you here?
Thanks, Jason. I'm Zach Hale, full-time real estate investor and the founder of the Real Estate Hub. Super excited to be joined tonight by none other than Rob and Nick. I actually met Rob at a recent real estate event. He was speaking on stage. I knew that he had to come and talk to the group. And ironically, when we sat down for a dinner, I was sitting right beside his table. So I was kind of nudging him and, here he is. So it's been a few months, Rob, and I'm super excited you're joining us today. Why don't you go ahead and introduce a little bit about yourself, Rob, and then hand it to maybe Nick.
Yeah, thanks, Zach. So Robinson Smith, I'm out here in Souk, BC, lovely Souk. We moved from Victoria last November. Love it out here. I'm the president of Smith Consulting Group Limited, which is a company which was formed by my father, Fraser, a long time ago. Fraser is the gentleman who developed the Smith Maneuver. And so now these days, what I'm doing is educating Canadian homeowners about this strategy and training up financial professionals across the country in order to help Canadians implement the strategy.
Awesome.
How about yourself,
Thanks, Rob.
Nick?
Yes, everyone. My name's Nick Cox. As you can tell, I'm Australian. I live in Vancouver, BC with my wife. I'm a Smith Manoeuvre certified professional. So my primary focus is helping clients execute the Smith Manoeuvre in its many varied ways and supporting Rob as the director of the Smith Manoeuvre Network. So I help train the other SMCP professionals across the country so they can implement it with their clients. And it's good to be here to support Rob and the other guys.
Perfect.
Thanks, Zach.
Melina, how about yourself?
You go next? Melina.
Sorry, am I going next? Sorry. Okay, I will. I'm Melina Cardinal. I'm the real estate investor's lawyer. I'm so excited about this topic. I have so many questions. And Andrew.
I'm Andrew MacDonald. Most of you know me if you've watched any of these calls before. I'm a mortgage broker who specializes in working with real estate investors. Since 2015, I've actually helped several of them with Smith Maneuver myself, but I'm a little fuzzy on some of the details. So I know that between Robinson and Nick, we're going to get this all sorted out. So I'm very excited for today's topic. It's probably the most interesting one we've done in my books to date. So I'm looking forward to learning and taking some notes. Back to Jason, I guess.
Thank you. As mentioned, my name's Jason. I am a business coach who helps make sure that your portfolio is an asset, not a job, with a focus on being a rent-to-own specialist. And of course, fashionably on time, we have our accountant in the mix. Vedran, do you mind taking a moment, if you can hear me, and let us know, who are you? Why are you here?
Hi, guys. Sorry, I'm right on time, actually. I'm here as the accountant for rent-to-own for Zach and Jason, specialize in tax work and can help with real estate transactions.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Now, before we jump into everything, just a couple of housekeeping things. Do me a favor, leave a comment below. Where are you calling in from? Or more importantly, can you hear us? Can you see us? Is there anything challenges? We want to know. But of course, we want to know exactly where you're coming in from so we know so we can tailor our answers specifically to the areas in which you're at. It looks like we had some challenges here. We can barely hear them. It sounds better now. Perfect. So please let us know down below. How is the sound going? Is it working? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? I feel like we should get a, a Fido commercial or royalty maybe? But with that being said, looks like we had some yeses. Perfect. Awesome. Before we go into it, Rob, how about a summary for those, some people might know what the Smith Maneuver is. Others may not have a clue. Do you have a summary for us by chance?
Sure. The Smith Maneuver is a financial strategy developed exclusively for Canadian homeowners. We have a problem in Canada in the fact that we pay a heck of a lot of tax As homeowners, we've got very, very high housing costs. We have this general, because of limited resources, inability to save enough money for our future so we can retire comfortably. So the challenge is, how do we position ourselves in order to take advantage of what we have available to us? And when we're talking about Canadian homeowners and mortgages, we have the ability to reduce our tax bill significantly. We have the ability to get rid of that expensive non-deductible debt mortgage much, much quicker than otherwise. And we have the ability to build an investment portfolio which otherwise simply wouldn't exist. And the nice part about all of this is it does not require any additional cash flow from the Canadian homeowner to implement the strategy and become significantly better off. All we're doing is restructuring their personal finances to take advantage of the equity in their principal residence as fast as they are creating it. So we're going to reduce your tax bill, get rid of your mortgage faster, and start investing money each and every month with nothing other than your mortgage payment, which you're making already.
Excellent. Well, it almost sounds too good to be true. I almost wonder if my, being that we have a lawyer on this, my first thought was, is it even legal?
You asking me?
Well, yeah. Firstly, there would not be two best-selling books, one by my father, Fraser, and one by myself, if it weren't legal. Secondly, this is, my dad developed this strategy back in the mid 80s. So it's been around for about 40 years now. And he actually had some people visit him unannounced one day in his office. Two gentlemen in suits entered the office and asked his assistant to speak to this Fraser Smith guy. And Dad says, well, who are they, Luann? I don't know. They want to speak to you. They're in suits. They're looking pretty official. All right, bring them in. And so they sat down and introduced themselves as two gentlemen from the CRA, Canada Revenue Agency, and Fraser says, fantastic, what do you want? Let's talk about the Smith Maneuver. You got it. He put pen to paper, drew out how it worked, how the flow of the money, all this stuff. And Fraser used to love to tell the story. He says, because about halfway through it, the little guy leaned forward and said, would this work for a $70,000 mortgage? So, and Dad never heard from them again, which is as big an endorsement you're going to get from the CRA. And actually, when I was an investment advisor, I was advising for 12 years. My clients were lawyers, police officers, judges, and even CRA employees. I put them into the strategy. So yes, long answer to the question, is it legal?
And just to add to that, I have never seen a CRA really question this or come attack clients about this. I have several clients who do use the Smith Maneuver.
Nice.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, let's turn it over to our experts. Anyone have any questions?
I mean, right away, it's like this isn't a strategy that's talked about a lot. Is that kind of the same thing that you see, Rob? It's not really talked about by banks and people that it's kind of a hidden strategy. That's why probably people think it's not legal.
Yeah, I mean the banks aren't going to talk about this. The big mortgage lenders aren't going to really talk about it. They are, but more internally to mortgage broker networks and stuff like that, not to the general public. My dad developed it, as I mentioned, back in the mid 80s. He waited a number of years. He put his private clients into it as a financial planner for a number of years before he wrote his book, which came out in early 2000s. And then he came back into advising again out of retirement. And so we weren't marketing or advertising or anything like that. He passed away in 2011, and I kept advising until 2018 when I sold my practice because I wanted to get out to Canadians to let them know about this strategy. So my book came out in 2019. And I've developed a Smith Manoeuvre Certified Professional Accreditation Program, which is a bit of a mouthful, but we're training up Canadians across the country, various financial professionals, mortgage brokers, investment advisors, accountants, insurance agents, you name it. All the people involved in helping a Canadian set up their financial systems. So now we are getting a lot more traction and chatter and a lot of interest by financial professionals to join the network to be able to help their clients. A lot of people talking about it, because when we were advising, we didn't do any marketing or advertising. We're just busy putting people into this. And that was the challenge I saw, is I want to get this out to Canadians because it's really, really bloody tough out there. There's a lot of challenges, and we've got a solution to a lot of Canadians. So since I started, really getting out there with the book and the program and all that sort of fun stuff. LinkedIn, Facebook, social media. That's where I cut my teeth, was with the Smith Manoeuvre on all those platforms. Now we are seeing an uptick in interest, which is fantastic because more people need to know about this.
Can I
Now,
comment to that
Rob,
one? Is that
sorry,
is that
go
okay?
ahead,
If I, so this strategy, it's, you know, a Venn diagram, it sits at the center of a Venn diagram. And what I mean by that, this is a strategy that is kind of a part of 3 different disciplines. This is a tax strategy, and there are a lot of CPAs out there that will advocate for it and support it, but most accountants aren't going to actively advise their clients on the strategy because it does require a bit of coaching and ongoing support, and it's not really baked into the accounting model. This is as solid a financial plan as you're ever going to come across, like applying the Smith Manoeuvre strategy to your mortgage portfolio. But most financial planners are concerned with insurance, investments, and estate planning. The mortgage doesn't get too much of a look in. And Andrew can attest to this. A lot of mortgage agents, like most of us, are loan officers. If you work for a bank, you're a bank employee and your job is to sell a mortgage product. Most mortgage brokers are loan officers. They're not accountants or financial planners. So you've got this strategy that has a tax component, a planning component, but has to be executed through a mortgage structure with a property that has non-deductible debt on it. So it just kind of sits at the center without being attached to any one profession. And one thing I love that, you know, a little bit of story for Rob, like he took over his dad's business, you know, and decided he was managing a portfolio and helping clients with the Smith Manoeuvre. He decided to move on from that, rewrite his dad's book and create this SMCP program so that he could educate professionals across the country to do this properly. And I, as someone who's been in the financial planning space and now focuses more on the mortgage side, I think it's probably one of the most valuable skill sets that a mortgage professional can have, because, you know, the most common reaction I get from people when the light goes on is like, why wasn't I doing this 20 years ago? Like, how come I'm just hearing about this? And the truth is, it's across the country and there are thousands and thousands of people doing it. It just hasn't reached that mass, you know, broad awareness with people, right?
Hasn't reached the mass market yet. And I want to say, like, it's probably not in the bank's best interest for you to pay your mortgage down faster.
They can't do it. And I'll just say one other thing that I often say, like, you know, we all know that in life, the things we can't avoid is the taxes on the income we earn and the interest on the debt that we've got. And the Smith Manoeuvre, and I think today more than ever, the Smith Manoeuvre is relevant because it directly speaks to those challenges that we all face, right? This strategy helps us save on tax, to pay our mortgage off faster, to get the bank off our back sooner. So we can use it to pay our mortgage off sooner or create extra wealth over the original period of the mortgage. Like, I actually get goosebumps when I talk to clients about it. And when that happens, you know you're doing something that's, you know, it's good, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That leads me to like, obviously, I have a property that would fit perfectly with this scenario that would allow me to pull this off. And I unfortunately still have a mortgage on the place. Not quite 15 years, but a bit of time. Can you go back?
Well, you've got the mortgage on your principal residence. So I'll clarify that the Smith Manoeuvre is a debt conversion strategy. So we Canadians, when we get a mortgage, we cannot deduct the interest on that mortgage because we're not borrowing to invest according to the CRA. We're borrowing to consume. We're not expecting any income to be generated from the home in which we live. The Americans can deduct a good portion of their mortgage interest, so they have the advantage there. Now, when you look at implementing the Smith Manoeuvre, yeah, it would have been nice to know about this 15 years ago when you had a $600,000 mortgage or whatever it was. Now you've only got $300,000. Well, it's not too late to start converting that. You've got $300,000 of non-deductible debt. Let's get rid of that as fast as we can. We can't turn back the clock. But the good news is that if you had a big mortgage 15 years ago and now it's gone down significantly, you've generated a lot of equity in that home. Mm-hmm. And one of the accelerators of the Smith Manoeuvre, and we can talk about what the plain Jane Smith Manoeuvre, the basic fundamentals is, but one of the accelerators, once you get financed in order to implement the strategy, is prime to pump. You can access the equity that you've generated by paying down that mortgage and the natural appreciation of the home over the years. Access that at refi, invest it. Where do you want to invest it? That's up to you. Some people want to go stocks, bonds, private lending. Do you want to get into investment real estate? Yes, I do. Great. Let's use that to buy your first rental property or other type of real estate investment. Once you have that, or if you already do, now you can start implementing the cash flow dam accelerator. And this is where we see a 25-year mortgage get compressed to 6 or 7 years or less. So
that's wild.
it's these different accelerators can really speed up the process. It's extremely powerful for real estate investors because these people typically already have some sort of real estate investment or are about to. This is why they're members of a group such as this. So if I may, can I just talk about the very basic fundamentals of
Yeah,
how
let's I was gonna ask, like,
Okay.
why don't you tell us what the plain Jane is of a Smith maneuver, and maybe Nick, you could tell us who's it for.
Yeah.
Who's like the ideal
Okay.
client of it being for.
Yeah, so the basic plain Jane Smith maneuver is the fact that taking advantage of the fact that every mortgage payment we make each and every month, a lot of it goes to interest, non-deductible, which is why mortgages are so expensive, but some reduces the principal. Let's say $1,000, you owe $1,000 less on that mortgage. With the right type of mortgage product, it's called a readvanceable mortgage. There are a lot of different readvanceable mortgages out there. That's why it's so important to use a Smith Maneuver certified professional mortgage broker, because you don't want to get the wrong mortgage, right? You don't want the wrong readvanceable for you. This is what the SMCPs take care of. But once you have the right type of mortgage, it's like refinancing your home every month, because you make that mortgage payment and that principal balance is reduced by $1,000, let's say. You've got an attached line of credit. That line of credit limit increases $1,000. You pull that out and you invest it. And with this structure, as we can see, previously I've got a 25-year mortgage. I'm doing nothing but making that mortgage payment for 25 years. And then once I paid that mortgage off 25 years later, now I've got that former mortgage payment. Ooh, now I can invest for my future. Guess what? Too late. We're engaging in an investment program starting now each and every month with that principal reduction. Pay it down $1,000, pull it out, invest. Next month, $1,000, pull it out and invest. And because we're borrowing to invest with a reasonable expectation of generating income, we can deduct the interest on that borrowing. This reduces our tax bill, which means we get a bigger tax refund. We take the refund, we make an extra payment. We weren't getting this tax refund before. Now we're getting one. Make an extra payment against your mortgage. Pull that out to invest as well. Continue this process month after month, year after year. And we see that 25 years of non-deductible debt do this, 20, 15, 10, depending on the accelerators, and maybe Nick will speak to the cash flow dam here, depending on the accelerators, we're getting to 5 years or even less on having that non-deductible mortgage debt. So,
Yep.
So there's 5 accelerators. Cash flow dam is one of them. It's of particular interest, I think, to the folks who are in on this call right now.
Yeah, and I'll say
Just to back up before you take over. So you're saying, like, let's say you have a $2,000 mortgage payment. $1,000's going to principal, $1,000's you're paying $2,000, and it's actually freeing up $1,000 on your HELOC. $1,000 because $1,000's going to principal, which frees up that $1,000 on HELOC. Just want to understand this for the viewers.
Yes.
Now you can access that HELOC to then further invest in something else.
That's right. The lender of the readvanceable mortgage that you have is happy to have you always owe them the same amount of dollars. Say $500,000. Got a $500,000 mortgage. Well, if you pay it down to $499,000, they say, wait, hey, we're always willing to have you owe us $500,000, so we're going to increase the line of credit so you can pull that back out. But what we do with that $1,000 each month is very, very important. Wealth destruction is pulling that $1,000 out to make a BMW payment or go on vacation. If you pull that out to invest, you're increasing your net worth, right? You're generating wealth, you're creating wealth. And a lot of people get hung up by the fact that, oh, okay, well, I owe $500,000 the day I start this. And at the end of the process, I'm still going to owe $500,000. Well, yeah, but that $500,000 is going to be fully tax deductible, which does fantastic things for your tax bill. Mm-hmm. Plus, you're going to have investment portfolio of $8, $9, $1.1 million offsetting that $500,000 deductible HELOC balance.
Got it.
I'll jump in to say a couple of things. And I think one thing that there's like a subtle beauty to the process here. Like, if you want to invest in your future, I think we can all agree that you have to find a delta in your income to do it, right? If you have to be spending less than you earn. You have to find money with which to save, right? If you want to invest in an RSP, or you want to invest in TFSA or a non-registered portfolio, or save for a down payment on a house, you've got to come up with new money, right? The subtle beauty of, like, we are property obsessed in this country. The subtle beauty of the Smith Maneuver is it doesn't require additional cash inputs to create additional wealth, right? We're using the regular mortgage payments that pay down the principal, it readvances in the HELOC, re-borrowing it to invest, and that investment portfolio is going to grow over time. And so we've created, it's not magic, we haven't created it out of thin air, but we're repurposing the principal reduction instantly and putting it to work so there's no debt equity in the property. And so the plain Jane Smith maneuver, which is the core, like, you know, when you talk about who is it relevant for, honestly, Zach, it's relevant for anyone who's bought a house that is interested in getting ahead financially. And again, like I help a lot of financial planners and their clients implement this strategy because like inflation's high, cost of living is high, like it's just hard to survive in Canada and make ends meet. If we're able to create a portfolio without costing any more money, and we're not going to get too into the weeds. Rob hasn't addressed like how we actually fund the interest costs on the line of credit, but this whole thing can be structured without any additional cash flow required above just your regular mortgage payment, which is a beautiful thing because you can save for your future and it doesn't cost you anything. What other program can actually say that? So I think from an education standpoint, there's a massive education piece that's missing for most of Canadians, and that this is something that I realized something. Can I tell a very quick story? Financial planner of mine that I do a lot of work with, he refers me a client and he says, don't tell this client about the Smith Manoeuvre because he knows that I tell everyone about it. And I go, okay, he goes, it's not going to be suitable for them. And so it's been a few weeks between the referral and me speaking to the client. And so I introduce it to the client on the phone. He's like, this is amazing. Like, how have I never heard of this before? And so, and he's like, why was I not already doing this? And so I spoke to the planner and he's like, you know what, there's probably a whole lot of opportunity in my book that I didn't think of. And so I decided in that moment, it's not for me to choose whether the person should. I feel like my fiduciary responsibility is to tell them what they can do. It's completely up to the client if it's within their risk tolerance and they're comfortable with it. But what if I didn't tell that person? 10 years goes on, and then they find out about the strategy. So I think it's important to create awareness about something it's a completely legal tax strategy, right? That allows us to replicate what the wealthy do in an incremental way. Got it.
And when you said anyone that owns a house, what about like rental properties, or like, do you see this more in primary residence, or?
This is
so I'll just start off here, Nick. So yeah. It's a debt conversion strategy. So it's for the mortgage that you have on the home in which you live. Now, that being said, it's for non-deductible mortgage debt. So if you've got a vacation property that's in your, you go there in the summers or whatever it is, you're not renting it out. It's also not tax deductible, that mortgage. So you can also implement the strategy on that. You can convert that non-deductible debt to tax deductible. Now, the Smith Maneuver, because it's a debt conversion strategy, is not a strategy that you would implement on a rental property, for example, because the mortgage is already tax deductible. You borrow to invest in the business. However, that rental property that you own, while there's no opportunity to convert debt there, it can massively increase the value that the plain Jane Smith Maneuver will give you. And this is where the cash flow dam comes in.
So go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'll explain. This is my favorite element of the Smith Maneuver. It's very relevant to people in the real estate space, and this can be taken out of and used in isolation. Like, you can do the cash flow dam and not apply other versions of the Smith Maneuver. It obviously works really well when you tie in the plain Jane with one of the 5 accelerators. But in the context of owning a rental property, it's very powerful. It's one of the fastest ways to convert debt. And the reason is, like, you've got a rental property that's producing income and you've got a primary residence mortgage. So the ideal avatar, like the ideal client here, is you want to have at least 15 years left on the amortization of your primary residence mortgage, right? Only in your personal name. And if you have one income producing rental property, this is the perfect client that it's for. And every single client that has that kind of a structure should be doing this, right? The general way they do it is they take their rental income, they put it into a checking account, it gets mixed in with other things, and they pay the rental expenses. Or they set up a checking account, rental income flows in, expenses flow out. And there's nothing essentially wrong with that, but there's a massive missed opportunity. So the way the cash flow dam works is we take the rental income, and when you get that income from the tenant, you can do whatever you want with it. So we apply it as an additional prepayment on the primary residence mortgage. Let's say you're getting $3,000 a month in rental income from your condo. So you're making your regular mortgage payment, then you're applying a $3,000 prepayment, right? And provided you've got the right structure, like Andrew said, you want a Scotia step or a Manulife one, the full value of the rental income plus the principal reduction of the regular mortgage payment will flow through to the HELOC. And then from the HELOC, we reborrow the money into what we call a Smith Manoeuvre or a rental clearing account, which is just an account for tracking purposes. And that account serves as the source of all the expenses on the rental. And so we're using the rules, right? Which if you You can borrow money to fund the investment expenses on the property. So we're using rental income to smash down your non-deductible debt. We're using borrowed funds to service your investment expenses. And I go through with clients 2 results here, like the debt conversion point. So what's the point in the future where this strategy has fully converted your debt from non-deductible to tax deductible? And that can happen anywhere from 4 to 12 years, depending on how much rental revenue is being run through the strategy. So the first point is the debt conversion point, and the second point is the mortgage freedom, and that's where the strategy allows you to pay off all the debt on the home. And I like you routinely show people how they can shave 5, 10, 15 years off the amortization by redirecting rental revenues to make their primary residence mortgage more tax efficient. And then, so that can be used in isolation, but this is part of a broader strategy of the Smith Manoeuvre. So this can be tied in as an additional part of the plain Jane and the other accelerators. But for real estate investors, it really is the way that if it's owned in personal names, like there's no better way to structure it.
Nice. And I just heard a reason to go tell my wife. I'm pretty sure I could sell her on the idea of buying a cottage near Andrew there based on this alone.
Yeah.
So I'm sure, sorry, Rob, I think you're muted.
Yeah, I was just asking if, Andrew, do you want Jason as a neighbor?
Yeah, the nearest neighbor is kind of far away, but I wouldn't mind.
I'll bring a deck of
Rob and Nick, I'm sure you guys get these questions, or these are common questions. So of course, with the Smith Maneuver, you're adding more leverage, right? So in an environment with changing interest rates going up and down, and perhaps with changing asset prices as well. You know, if you're reinvesting into real estate, or if you're investing into an equities portfolio, which could be volatile. I mean, you know, let's say equities are in a period of volatility. How would you still recommend this strategy? So I guess 2 questions. You know, how would you change the strategy in an environment with changing interest rates? You know, we saw them come up very quickly. We see them coming down now, probably. And then part 2, how would you adapt it if equity prices or asset prices are also volatile, being equity portfolio or real estate investment? You know.
Yeah. So thanks, Vedran. Firstly, you mentioned that this is adding leverage. And this is one of the conversations that my dad said he has had since he began this program. The fact is that when you go and buy your house and get a mortgage for $500,000, there's your leverage. You've borrowed to buy the house. That's the leverage. You have already leveraged. All we're doing is converting that mortgage debt from bad debt to good debt. We're not borrowing any more debt.
Maybe I should rephrase. I mean, I guess because the debt is never really decreasing. You're always going up to that 500. So, pardon. Yeah, let's rephrase it. You're always at that same leverage then.
Yeah, you're at the same amount, right? That's right. But we're doing good things by converting it from bad debt to good debt. Now, as far as rates are concerned, we know if anyone's been paying attention to what interest rates have been doing over the past few years, we know they go up and down. But we have to remember that this strategy was developed by my father back in the mid-'80s when rates were double digits, 18, 19%. And, you know, I hear people on the internet chat rooms, they're just complete rat's nest of misinformation. But, you know, the Smith Maneuver doesn't work when rates are high. Well, we wouldn't be talking about it if the Smith Maneuver didn't work when rates were high, because this was developed back in the mid-'80s when they were double digits. I also see Smith Maneuver doesn't work when rates are low. Well, yeah, it does. It's been continuous operation by Canadians for 40 years now, and we've also had low rates. The nice thing about the Smith Maneuver is when rates are high, like we recently saw or seeing now, then we get a big fat juicy tax refund. The higher the rates, the bigger our tax refunds. The bigger our tax refunds, the more we have the ability to prepay our mortgage each year to get rid of it faster. But at the expense of those big tax refunds is the fact that we have a little bit less to invest each month into our portfolio. So maybe instead of $1,000 to invest when rates go up, we have $950 to invest. But our tax refunds are higher, as I said. Now, when rates go down, our tax refunds aren't as large, but instead of having $950 to invest each month, we've got $1,050 to invest each month into our portfolio. So it's this balancing act, which means it works when rates are high and when rates are low. As far as the markets are concerned, yeah, they go up, they go down, same as rates. But we get into this knowing that that is the case. If we, and that's part of the job of the Smith Manoeuvre certified professionals on the investment component of this, is to say, hey, you're going to get invested in what you invest in is up to you. But if you're invested in the markets and equities, you do know they go up and down, right? Yes, I know. Okay, you do know that the day after I get you invested, your very first $1,000, markets are going to go down, right? I used to tell my clients that all the time, right? As soon as I get you invested, markets are going to go down. What are you going to do? Panic? No, good, right? So this is as long-term a financial strategy as it gets. This is until death, right? It doesn't have to be, but ideally we maintain that tax-deductible debt all our lives, because if we maintain tax-deductible debt, we're not using dollars to pay down that deductible debt at the expense of not getting invested for 8, 9, 10, 12, 15% growth or whatever we're investing in. We have the ability to pay out that deductible debt early if we wish, if we got this portfolio, but this is long-term. And we know for a fact that if you're in the markets for a long period of time, you're going to do okay. This is why investing exists, right? You look on, everyone knows the index charts. You look at the 10-year periods going back from 1950, and Canadian equities have done 10%, right, on average. And yes, you're going to have some tough years. Yes, you're going to have some good years. But we know what markets have always done. That's not to say they'll continue to do that, right? Go up, fluctuate, but go up. But we recognize that if we do not invest, then it's game over. We're destined to live the life that we probably don't think we deserve.
So the answer is that it's long-term investing, right? Because I guess you'd have to tell your clients that at any given moment, short-term, you could be underwater, right? If your asset values are lower than the debt, than up to the 500, right? For a period of time, there could be a small period of time, doesn't matter, X period of time, where you could be a little underwater, right?
Well, many of us will remember 08, 09, right? It was a terrible time in the markets. I got into advising in 2006, just before the cliff, okay? And I was adding over $1 million AUM a month to my clients, strictly doing the Smith Manoeuvre. And then that crash happened. And we had some clients who said, I can't handle this, I want out, right? We did our best to say, hey, you knew it was long-term, right? You knew that. But for whatever, maybe their spouse wasn't comfortable, whatever it is. But the vast majority hung in there. And guess what? Markets turned around and they're now much higher than they were before 08 happened.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the worst we've ever seen. So get in, stay in, don't look at it all day long, right? This is dollar cost averaging every month. We're putting $1,000, $1,500, $800, whatever it is. Get in, invest with the help of a professional, because they're as much a psychologist as they are an investment advisor, right? I've been there. And, markets will do what they always have do, I expect, and your portfolio will increase over time, and you'll have this big nut at the end of the day when you want to slow down, and you can say, hey, I want to switch from growth to cash flow because I'm going to slow down at work, or I'm going to retire. I want to start generating some dividends, some distributions, whatever it is.
And the reason I asked that was because just, we've been having these discussions, let's say once a month, once every couple months. And the last few, there's been questions on what happens if real estate markets are going down. There's been various experts who have been saying, it's a good time to buy here, a good time to buy there, a good time to buy anytime. There's various opinions. So I guess it's just all about communicating with your client. They need to understand their horizon. They need to understand the risk. And obviously still, like what we've been saying for months and months, is you still have to find the right deals.
Absolutely. What you don't want to do is take the money and invest in your cousin's internet startup. Invest wisely with the help of a professional. Nick, were you going to say something there?
I just want to say a couple of things, which is your mortgage, when you get a mortgage, it's for 20, 25, 30 years. Right? This is a strategy. You want to think of this as like, it's just attached to your mortgage, right? That it's a long-term strategy. I like to think of, I guess, a couple of things that I just wanted to point out. One was, as interest rates ebb and flow, you can ratchet, this isn't a set and forget plan. You need to adjust the plan ongoing. And like Rob said, sometimes you're going to be able to invest more. Other times you've got to hold it back and the tax refunds are going to fluctuate. But it's just about, and this is why having an SMCP professional is really important, because they understand how to manage the strategy long-term and how to, work with the client on that. And in terms of the risks, I generally characterize the risks into three, and Rob, let me know if I've missed any. But I think the three risks can be classified into implementation risk, market risk, and liquidity risk. Implementation risk meaning like you're not implementing it properly, you don't have the right support, and you kind of muck up the implementation of the plain Jane or the other accelerators. So you don't want to fall foul with the CRA. You want to make, like Rob said, there's a lot of misinformation out there. A lot of people think they know what the Smith Manoeuvre is, but then when you ask them, they don't really get it. So you want to make sure that you're working with at least one person who really understands the guts of the strategy. Market risk, like let's talk about the underlying investment portfolio. We all know that if you go to a financial planner, you're going to have 2 awesome years, 2 terrible years, and 6 average years. So you've got to be in it for the long term, and you've got to recognize one thing that could be a risk is having to wind down the strategy when the markets are down. So you've got to take that long-term view and be comfortable with managing the risk of the underlying portfolio. And the other one is liquidity risk, because you could use the underlying investment as like a mortgage investment corporation investment, right? They're very stable, high yields, long term, like they do pretty well. But you're going to need a year to get your cash out. So if you need your money back quickly, you might not want to look at something like an investment where your money's tied up long term. Rob, have I missed any? Like, are they kind of the 3 main risks? Is implementation, market, and liquidity?
One of the biggest risks is behavioral. It's the investor themselves.
Yeah,
right? It's saying that they understand it's long term, and then when something happens, they completely ditch the long term aspect.
Right.
Behavioral is investor know thyself. Get in, stay in, have faith that the world will continue to function as it always has. If the big corporations and wealthy individuals are invested, well, it works.
So I just wanted to make sure I've gotten capturing the golden nuggets along the way. So one golden nugget from this is this strategy takes the interest I'm paying on my personal residence that I pay with after tax dollars and converts it into debt, the interest that I'm paying on before tax dollars. Am I correct on that?
A simple, sorry, Rob, can I
I
just jump
just
in?
saw we had 2 hands up. Sorry, I missed you, Milena and Andrew. Go ahead,
So just to answer you, Jason, though, the simple concept being interest is not deductible if it's for personal reasons. Interest is deductible if it's used for investments. That's kind of the gist. So you're converting from one into the other. That's if you want it in a simple kind of way. Sorry, guys.
You're paying hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars of non-deductible interest over a 25-year mortgage. The faster you can get rid of that mortgage debt, the less you're going to pay in non-deductible interest. And so that's what the Smith Maneuver does. It gets rid of that non-deductible debt very, very quickly, replaces it with tax-deductible debt. And if you've got $15,000 worth of tax deductions for the year, that's a lot of money back. It depends on your marginal tax rate, but that's a lot of money back from the government. And you don't have to spend any more money from your pocket to get that tax refund.
Nice.
The government rewards you. They say, hey, I see that you've been borrowing to invest each month, and that this balance on this HELOC, which has been growing, meaning your tax refunds grow over the years, we want to reward you by making it tax deductible. Why are they rewarding you? They're rewarding you because you are investing in the economy. You're investing in companies which then can grow and have to hire new people, and they can tax the companies on new profits. They can tax their new employees, right? So there's a lot more bigger tax base because you are investing in the economy, however you're doing it.
Andrew, do you want to jump in?
Yeah. I thought Andrew had his hand up there, his digital hand up for a little while there.
Yeah.
Right. Sorry, so just to back up a little bit, you talked about the long-term stuff, but on that last point you made, that's when you first explained that's where I can really see this snowball effect, because you start to get the tax refund. Now you take the tax refund and use that to do the prepayment, and then you open up even more room, and then it gets faster and faster as it goes. And maybe that's part of the reason that you mentioned the 15-year timeline. So I just wanted to clarify on that. What was the reason that you're looking to have at least 15 years left on a mortgage in order to
this? Nick is speaking as an SMCP mortgage broker, and he's got his avatar. He knows which clients he really loves to work with. But the fact is that even if I've got 8 years left on my mortgage, that's 8 years of non-deductible interest payments. Let's knock that down as fast as we can. If I've got a brand new mortgage and I'm getting a 30-year AM, I don't want to pay that for 30 years. I want to get rid of that in 15 or 10 or 8. So regardless of your mortgage balance, regardless of your age, if you've got mortgage debt on your principal residence that's non-deductible, you've got a problem. But we've got the answer to that problem. We're going to get rid of it faster, right? And we're going to turn that liability into an asset. You're basically taking that equity that is comprised of the mortgage, and replacing it with equity that is comprised of an investment portfolio.
Okay, so it's not a hard and fast rule. It's just more like that's Nick's avatar. But what you're saying is this would work for anyone regardless of how long you have left on the mortgage.
My father developed this for anybody who has a mortgage, not necessarily someone who has a mortgage and a rental property. It's someone.
Yeah, mine was sorry. I let my specific avatar on the cash flow dam slip out of my mouth there. When on the cash flow dam side, that's what I look for. But Rob's completely right. As long as there's non-deductible debt on the home, you can look at various ways to implement the strategy.
Yeah, I just didn't want anyone to think their amortization's less than 15 years and they can't do
Thanks
it.
for clarifying that, man.
Absolutely not. You've got a mortgage. Let's get rid of it faster, regardless of how many years you got left.
Excellent.
Awesome.
And Milena, what do you got for us?
So I have so many questions. Okay, my first question is, can we do it all at once? Like, say I win the lottery, right? Can I just pay off my existing mortgage, borrow a brand new mortgage, invest that?
You stole my next question.
This is precisely why my dad developed. This is precisely why my dad developed the strategy, is because the wealthy have been doing this for years. They go, they got a mortgage. They say, oh, geez, I got a $500,000 investment portfolio over here. I got a $500,000 mortgage. I'm going to sell my investment portfolio. I'm going to pay down my mortgage or my lottery winnings, pay down my mortgage to zero, borrow it back, and then buy those same investments that I just sold. So
sorry to cut you off, but then if you do what you said, but they're taking the money from their investment portfolio, like selling their investment portfolio, the tax on that would have to be paid, right?
This is a case where this is what we call the debt swap accelerator.
Okay.
I've got a mortgage. I've got an investment portfolio that I've had for a while. Let's say it's $20,000. It's not the full amount that my mortgage balance is, but I have the ability to sell that investment portfolio. Absolutely, I'm going to want to look at tax. Maybe it hasn't done that well. Maybe I got to pay $1,000, $1,500 in tax, whatever. Okay, yeah, it definitely makes sense to sell that $20,000 investment portfolio, pay that $1,000 in tax, whatever it is, pay down my mortgage by 20 grand, borrow back that 20 grand, buy the exact same investments the next day if I want to.
Right.
I'd immediately converted $20,000 of bad debt to $20,000 of good debt. My total debt has not changed. I still have that investment portfolio of $20,000.
But you'll pay the tax on capital gains on the value or on the increased value.
That's why I say you want to look at the taxation. If you're going to get taxed too high, you look at the numbers, right?
Yeah.
Which one makes sense?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's why I said like a windfall. Like say you're a real estate agent, not incorporated, and you had like the record year of your life, and now you've got a couple $100,000 sitting in the bank account, and you're like, well, I want to invest that money. Better off paying your mortgage first, assuming it's the whole balance or whatever, right?
People say, okay, I've got all this money, I've got all this cash. What do? Do I pay down my mortgage or do I invest? And the answer is you do both.
Both, right?
Pay down your mortgage, pay it off, or pay down a good chunk of it, borrow it right back and invest. Because the last thing you want to do, from my mind and probably from a real estate investor's mind, is take cash, pay down your mortgage. Hey, no more mortgage. Great. Well, guess what? You've got all this equity in your home that's earning you less than 0% thanks to inflation, and you've got the missed opportunity cost of that $200,000.
Right.
So real estate investors are particularly savvy to the point where they know they don't want any excess equity in their assets. They want to put it to work.
Yeah.
So you got cash, the debt swap down, pull it back out and invest.
Okay. So my other question is, so most investors, or a lot of investors that I work with, invest through a corporation. So that's the case with us. All of our investments are owned through a corporation. So, and of course, like cash flow is always a question. It's always, questioning how we maintain the cash flow in this changing economy and everything, right? So can I do the Smith Maneuver the way that you initially suggested it, right? Where we just convert it to a HELOC, convert our mortgage to a HELOC, and then slowly take out the cash and simply invest it in my corporation, which then helps support cash flow, or maybe build a down payment for another property or something like that.
And correct me if I'm wrong here, Vedran, but is it Vedran?
Vedran.
Okay.
It's Croatian.
Thank you. we should get some slivovitz sometime.
Oh, hey, some rakia.
The question is, what did you do with the money? Did you borrow to invest with the reasonable expectation of generating income? If you have, you can deduct the interest here. What does that mean? I can invest in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, mix, REITs, ETFs, investment real estate, somebody else's business, my business. Now, the question of if I'm taking $1,000 a month from that HELOC, because I'm paying down $1,000 a month, if I'm investing $1,000 a month into my corporation, because that's where all my business is done, what does that look like from an accounting perspective? Is it shareholders' loans? Are you buying new shares each month? So that can be a lot of paper. So maybe there's an opportunity that once every 6 months or once a year, you take a chunk out of your HELOC and then paper that.
Right.
Rob's absolutely right. And one more thing to add, he's absolutely right in terms of the CRA or the Tax Act doesn't specify what you can invest in. As long as it's just a reasonable, that you're expecting to earn profits, then it counts. Now, but I just do want to caution everyone, it doesn't count if you put it into your RSP or your TFSA.
Right.
And any interest that you pay, even though if you took the money and then you invest into RSP and then bought stocks or anything, but within your RSP, it doesn't count because it's a registered account. Same thing with the TFSA. So it has to be a non-registered account or any kind of other investment, just not sheltered in some kind of registered investment vehicle.
Thank you for that. It's a very good point. It's not to say that you can't borrow from your HELOC to contribute to your RSP. You can do that, but you're just not going to get the tax deductions. So you're paying down non-deductible debt and you're borrowing back non-deductible debt. So the nice thing about this is when people say, oh, don't do it unless you've maxed out your RSPs. Well, tell you what, continue to invest $350 a month into your RSPs. Previously, that's all you had, but now you implement the Smith Maneuver. You can continue to do $350 in cash like you always have for your RSPs, but now you've freed up $1,000 a month to invest in an open account, a non-registered account.
Excellent. All right, Andrew.
Well, on the topic of the debt swap, I have a question kind of related to the mechanics of how that's done. I mean, the cleanest way to do it is to pay out the existing mortgage, borrow the debt, and go rebuy the investments. Is there a way to do that without actually getting rid of the initial mortgage? So let's say someone has enough cash or enough investments, maybe they have a $100,000 mortgage balance remaining, but it's locked in at a really great rate. Is there a way that they can facilitate the debt swap without actually breaking that mortgage that might not be available today and still have it be defensible to CRA as deductible interest?
Well, in this case, are you saying that $100,000 locked in, you can't make any prepayments on it?
Well, yeah, you could, but then when you reborrow it, you would be reborrowing at a higher rate. So Milena was asking about this earlier. Sorry to steal your question a little bit, maybe. But let's say someone had, one of the uniform 199 5-year fixed locked in, and then they still have 3 years left on it. You don't really want to give up a 199 rate and then take money in, probably the high 4s these days. So is there a way that they could still facilitate the debt swap by demonstrating, okay, I sold 100,000 of assets, or I have 100,000 of cash. I could have paid it off, but I don't really want to. Like, is there a way to do that debt swap without giving up that really great rate they have access to currently?
Well, you're gonna pay that down at 2%. You're gonna borrow it back at 7% currently, right? 7 plus. That's gonna happen. But don't forget, if you're just let's say it's 7%, you're reborrowing it at. For ease of math, if you're at the 50% marginal tax rate, that really only costs you 3.5%, right?
Yeah.
So there's that. It's not 7, it's 3.5. But in order, and it's not just the debt swap here. It's should I break my mortgage, which does not work for the Smith Maneuver, at the rate I've had for the past 3.5 years, which is really good, in order to get into a mortgage that will allow this to function at a higher rate? Does it make sense, right? And Nick doing this as for a living will have something to say on that.
So I think, yeah, Rob is saying the concept is the same. Ultimately, it doesn't matter if it's 2% or 7%, right? That goes back to Rob, what you were saying. If it's at 7%, you just get a higher refund then.
Yeah, your tax refunds are larger. The amount of dollars coming out there's going to be a discrepancy because you're paying down 2%, you're borrowing back at 7%, ignoring marginal tax rate, deductibility, and all that stuff. So there's numbers to be worked out here. But, you know, as we touched on before we went live here, there's things to consider. And Nick, I'll let you go on this about the opportunity cost.
Yeah, so you're right. Sometimes mentally, particularly for clients and even for ourselves, it can be hard, like paying a penalty to get into a higher rate mortgage. Like, it doesn't make sense. So one would think, okay, I'm just going to wait 3 years to do this, or 4 years, right? Because we have oftentimes 5-year mortgage terms. So that's one school of thought, and that it actually makes sense. Like, you know, I'm just going to wait. I got 1.5, 1.99. I'll wait until the renewal, and there's nothing wrong with that. But another question to ask is, what's the economic cost of waiting? So this strategy takes off slow, but it builds over time. So I tend to look at the end of the strategy, and I look at the wealth, the change in net wealth per year towards the later years. And then I look at, you know, what is the delay in the delay of me starting by 3 years is going to delay me getting these results by 3 years, which means I'm going to have to be 3 years older to produce those kind of results. And then the $6,000 break cost and the few $1,000s extra I'm paying in interest for 2 or 3 years seems like a reasonable cost to pay for the long-term benefit of what I'm going to be getting. So I'm not saying there's a right or wrong answer there, but it's a point to have a conversation with the clients. And I've had clients go either way with it. I've got one client right now, we're waiting for her RBC mortgage to finish off at 1.74, because she's like, I'm not doing it, I can't do it. And I've had others that have had no problem breaking midterm to start the strategy, because it just made sense.
There's that's kind of what I've seen. It depends how aggressive you are with your investment. So if you can go out and make 12, 15, 25, 30% returns, okay, then it makes sense to give up the 199. But for that more conservative investor that's probably just sticking it in, you know, ETFs or something, they might not see the same spread. So it may not be worth it. I mean, I haven't done the numbers for someone like that. Most of my clients are real estate investors, so they are pretty aggressive. But yeah, I was just wondering, is there any way you could possibly hold on to that, you know, magical 2% rate and still, you know,
if
kind
you
of
don't have the right mortgage, if you don't
there,
have the right
there
mortgage,
is. Hang on, there's a workaround. You know what the workaround is, Rob? If they've got, so if they really want to start the strategy, but they don't want to get rid of the rate, you know what, they can, if they've got equity in the property, they could go get a second mortgage, right? There's a lot of alt lenders that'll set you up with a HELOC behind a big bank. And so you set up a HELOC, you set up a static HELOC with the existing lender, or a static HELOC with another lender in second position, that allows you to access the capital between then and the remainder of the term. And they can start the strategy, and then, you know, you rejig everything at the renewal point. That would be the workaround. That's the only workaround that I can think of if you didn't want to get rid of the mortgage. Does that make sense?
So
I have done that with cash flow down clients before, where we set them up with a HELOC somewhere else to actually run the rental expenses for the portfolio. And then I'm still using the rental income to pay down the primary residence mortgage. It doesn't re-advance, but I've got a HELOC over here that has enough room to run all the rental expenses from. So I'm running all the rental expenses from over here. I'm using the rental income to pay down the primary, and I'll rebalance it all at the renewal day.
And
yeah, so you have enough time to just pay it off.
A simple thing you can do that I do just as a concept before, you know, running any numbers, is if I've got 3 years before the end of my term and I got to renew, I got to refinance into a mortgage that's 4 percentage points higher or whatever it is, you know, what does that cost me on a monthly basis? How much more does that cost me on a monthly basis? And by breaking that mortgage now, what are the numbers? Well, for the next 3 years, I am able to invest $1,000 a month that otherwise I'm not able to if I don't break my mortgage. And that goes to speak to what Nick was saying earlier, because you can project this out. If I do it now over a 25-year mortgage, here's my projected net benefit. We've got a Smith Manoeuvre calculator that Nick has access to. If I wait 3 years, at that same point, what's my projected net benefit? Well, it's going to be less. I've lost 3 years. So
I was looking, and at that point, like at the end, we're talking sometimes like $50,000-$100,000 a year in the net wealth improvement. So it's a big number.
Yeah.
So
this is the age-old story, right? It's not all about the rate. It's the overall big picture. What's the lowest cost of borrowing? What's your after-tax cost of borrowing? How much money is it going to make you if you incur this penalty? The penalty always sounds scary.
Yeah.
But when you get the benefit of paying a penalty, sometimes it really does make sense.
You know, it's not the interest rate, but the volume of interest you pay over the term as well, right? A lot of people get caught up with that. That's where the Manulife one can be a good option for the right client.
Yeah.
Elena, I
So-
know your arm's getting tired because your hand's been up for so long.
Yes, my digital muscles are hurting. So does any readvanceable mortgage work for this? So could it be like a Scotia Step or a Manulife One, or Desjardins has a similar product? Can't remember what they call it. So do all of these lenders work?
Nick?
Yeah, I'll answer that one. The answer is simply the yes, but the subtle nuances between each lender. Like RBC, for example, depending on the kind of Smith Manoeuvre implementation you're wanting to execute, and the way the HELOC functions and the prepayment privileges work, will determine what's appropriate. And I'll just give you an example. Let's say you've got a client that has $10,000 of rental income that they want to flow through their primary residence with the cash flow dam. Scotia will allow you to prepay 20% of the original balance, double up your mortgage payment, and increase the base payment by 20% per year. So there's going to be enough room to flow that $10,000 per month through. But RBC, for example, they will let you double up your mortgage payment and prepay 10% once per year on the anniversary. So I've had a lot of clients that are with RBC where we're like, we have to move you, even though they've got the right product structure with the re-advancing HELOC, they have so much rental income that they can't actually fit it through the primary because they'll break their prepayment privileges. So it's important to understand what kind of Smith Manoeuvre strategy is going to be employed and what are the prepayment privileges with that lender, and how does the HELOC function? Is it automatic limit increasing? Yeah.
And of course, I'm imagining you guide your clients through all that. You basically look at all of those different options and you put them in the
100%.
best. But so if someone has a mortgage with Desjardins, and Desjardins maybe is not the absolute perfect option, but there is a product out there that can at least get them into it, could they not just convert internally and then they get a blended rate? Say they've increased the amount of the loan, then maybe they get a blended rate so they're not completely losing on the rate that they've got.
Sorry, are you talking about changing the product structure within the same lender?
Yeah, because I mean, a lot of lenders will have a product that could at least get people started.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll give you some. I've got clients with TD where they didn't have a HELOC and they needed one, and they broke the mortgage. We restructured them with TD, and they called it a replacement mortgage, and they actually gave the break cost back. But there is only, most lenders don't have re-advancing HELOCs like the big players do. So you're looking at your Scotia, Manulife, TD, RBC, all the big ones have it. But again, there's the functionality. There's a difference between the mortgage broker channel, as Andrew would know, and the lenders outside our channel. In the mortgage broker channel, and I obviously would always advocate seeing someone like Andrew for your mortgage, is like the lenders in order of preference for functionality is Manulife, Scotia, TD, MCAP. I typically stick with Scotia and MCAP and Manulife as much as possible because the product structure is flexible. Like TD will only allow you to have one mortgage component and one HELOC component, but Scotia, you can have 3 HELOCs and 3 mortgages secured to the one property. So a lot more flexible in terms of setup and structure.
Yeah, and Scotia's got the automatic credit limit increase feature, so I request that for every investor client. Like it's a standard part of my submission notes to the lender. Manulife is great too, but it's got the $7 monthly fee. I find sometimes that scares people away. That's a little tougher to qualify for investors, but those are my top 2 if anyone's interested in this strategy.
And it's a more complex product as well. Like the Manulife, I love Manulife, but it's a more complex product. So you've got to have a client that's got the mental bandwidth to have that deeper conversation around the structure. And then we won't go deep on this, but the implementation with the Smith Manoeuvre between the lenders is different. So Manulife is very different to like Scotia, with the specific steps one would go through to actually execute the plan.
And
it's like an uphill battle to get clients to wrap their head around how the Manulife one works, and then the way that they do the statements is a little bit confusing compared to this step, I find.
I was just going to say, we've got Smith Manoeuvre certified professionals of a number of different professions, mortgage brokers, investment advisors, accountants, all the different types of professionals that a Canadian should surround themselves with anyways, doing the strategy or not, as far as I'm concerned. But the intricacies of the strategy are not necessarily needed to be understood in depth by the homeowner. It's great if it is, but we have these professionals who are trained in order to be able to say, hey, do this.
Yeah.
You want to learn more about it, we'll make sure.
I don't know what my accountant and my lawyer do. I don't want to know. I trust them to do it, right?
So do this, because if you're talking to someone and they think they know it, but they don't know it, this is where people, you know, they fall into holes and they don't jump over the hurdles successfully, you know, they run into challenges. Getting it right is the most important thing here. And that's precisely why I've trained up and am training up these professionals across the country, because there's too many horror stories about people who thought their professional knew what they were doing and they didn't.
Can I ask the panel a question? I want to see if someone gets it. I try to trick people up. It's just a little bit of, not a joke, but most people don't get the answer to this, which is we've mentioned that the Smith Manoeuvre, you can execute this strategy without any change to your cash flow. But we're also saying that, well, as you pay down the principal, we reborrow the money from the line of credit. Now, and that's going to increase every month. So that HELOC is going to have an interest payment each month. So my question to the panel and the audience, if you guys
Dude, this was literally going to be my next question to you guys: is how do you cover that interest on the HELOC?
Okay, well, I know that you can't. I know Zach's not going to answer. It's when I read Robinson's book, I was getting so frustrated because I'm like, for the love of God, how do you pay the interest on the HELOC? I couldn't figure it out. So my question to the panel, and I'm not expecting to get it. If you get it and you haven't read the book, like you clued in. So, and Vedan, like a veteran, sorry, I'm wondering if you've got it. How do you service the interest costs if it doesn't cost you anything? Where does that money come from? And you've got to find that payment every single month.
I can. Andrew probably knows.
Oh, Andrew knows.
I may have read the book a long time ago. I don't know if this is right or not.
I know, but
my understanding is if you're borrowing for the purpose of investment to generate profit, you should be able to use the line of credit to borrow even more money to stay invested in the stock market or whatever the other investment is. Is that right? I don't know.
You know, it is technically right. So it's it's the increasing efficiency of the primary residence mortgage payment. Can I just explain that? So as payment number one, you pay down the mortgage by $1,000. The $1,000 re-advances in the HELOC, you take $1,000 out and invest it. But if you ever look at an amortization calculator, what you'll see is that every single mortgage payment, you pay a little bit less interest, a little bit more principal. So you're creating a delta. And so mortgage payment number two, maybe you pay $1,020 off. So that flows through the line of credit. You take the $1,000 out and invest it, and you leave 20 to service the interest costs. So your answer is correct, Andrew. You're using the room that's being created in the HELOC to service the interest costs on itself.
And the amortization.
That's why it's financially beautiful. Because
that was the one piece that I just couldn't wrap my head around, because I was like, if you're borrowing at a 7% HELOC and investing it, you're gonna have to make like 10% on your money to then get the delta of 3% to cover the HELOC payment.
Yeah, but it's not what you make on the investment that matters, right? Because your investment portfolio, you are not reliant on your investment portfolio to generate income in order to service the interest on that HELOC.
Got it.
So if someone, you know, and Andrew, there's a question that was posted here. What if you do 100K into the Smith Manoeuvre and your mortgage rate is 5%, you invest the money and only get a 5% rate of return? First of all, it's not clear if the mortgage rate, the amortizing rate is 5% or if the borrowing rate is 5%, but
I think he means the interest rate.
Pardon me?
I think he means the interest rate is 5%. That's roughly what rates are at now. And then if you're investing and getting a rate of return of 5%.
Well, it's either you're, you know, firstly, you're paying down bad money, you debt at 5%. So you're making 5% there, and you're borrowing and earning 5%. So you're saving 5% by paying it down, and you're making 5% on the investing component, right? So, you know, at some point in your investing career as a Smith Manoeuvre investor, you are going to go through periods where your investment portfolio, maybe it makes negative, right? Hopefully that's for a short period of time, because all investments go up and go down, that sort of thing. But if you've invested wisely, it's a short down and it's going to come back up again. But you're not reliant on that investment earning you a return in order to service the expense of the Smith Manoeuvre. So you can earn 0% for a good number of years. That's not great, but you can, and you can still operate the strategy because the increase in efficiency of the regular mortgage payment.
But like any investment, you still want to you still want to make more money than the money that you're leveraging to make that money.
Well,
Right.
absolutely.
And I mean, the stock market, that makes complete sense because it ebbs and flows. But I also probably wouldn't want to borrow at 5% to do a private lend, like a private mortgage at 5%, because then what's the point? I would probably just leave it in the line of credit readily available. Then when I find the investment that feeds my soul and gets me enough return to offset the interest that I'm paying on the line of credit, then it makes sense. Oh, okay, I've got an opportunity at 12% return flat rate, or an opportunity to invest in equity, build portfolio, whatever it is, right?
You've got ultimate freedom with this. Like, let's say there's $1,000 to invest each month. I can invest 500 of that into one type of investment, 300 into a different type of investment, and leave the other 200 undrawn. That will build over time, this undrawn credit, for feeds my heart and soul investment opportunity. You can invest in one thing, a whole bunch of different things, a whole bunch of different types of investments if you want to. The universe of investments is wide open. You're not restricted to any single one. Diversify, get assistance, do it wisely. Don't go to Vegas with this $1,000 a month or more, depending on the accelerators, that sort of thing. So,
but in Vegas, you can double it quickly.
Okay.
Can I, you just made me think of something which I think would be good for the audience to know. And this is really cool because, a lot of property investors ended up with negative cash flow based on where rates went. You can use the cash flow dam strategy to help cushion the negative cash flow that you're getting on your rental portfolio. Because when you pay down your principal residence mortgage, that principal will re-advance. So you use the rental income to pay down the primary. The rental income that's previously used to pay the rental expenses will flow through to the line of credit, along with the regular principal reduction. So you're creating extra room. And then you can actually re-borrow not just the rental income, but a portion of or all of the principal reduction to fund the expenses on the rental property. So what this can help you do is ride out the wave of a negative cash flow property without it affecting your monthly cash flow. Does that make sense? It's so you'd be foregoing maybe the plain Jane version where you're repurposing a portion of the principal to invest to go. It's kind of like going interest only on your primary residence mortgage. You're using the principal reduction to offset negative cash flow. And I've got a lot of clients that were like, I'm $1,000 a month under, and it's killing me. And I'm like, cool. Well, let's have a look at. I said, look, if we can re-amortize your mortgage to 30 years and you're paying off this much principal, we can actually give you that $1,000 back. It's going to mean you're going to tread water for a little while, but you're not bleeding $1,000 a month. So that's a really important point, I think, that real estate investors should know. If you've got a portfolio and you're negative cash flow, and you're okay to go interest only or lean into the principal reduction of the primary, you can cushion that a little bit. If you've got the cash flow to meet it, and it's no stress. But if you don't, this can help.
And also, back when we had the financial crisis of 08, 09, my clients were able to generate cash flow. They're in it for growth, right? They're reinvesting dividends and distributions and all this stuff. And then the bad stuff happens. And people were losing their jobs all across the country. I had clients that lost their jobs. If my client was not doing the Smith Maneuver, he lost his job, he lost his house. But because he had implemented the Smith Maneuver, he lost his job, but could now turn that investment portfolio from growth to income generating. And he kept his house. And there were a number of people like this. So, there's obviously a whole bunch of things to weigh: interest rates up and down, markets up and down. But what we really want to look at, and the fact that you're maintaining debt, right? But what we really want to look at is net worth, right? Is your net worth improving? If your net worth is improving through the Smith Maneuver, it's because you've got this investment portfolio that has the ability, if you wish, to generate income, whereas otherwise you wouldn't have that nut to generate income in times that you may need it.
Got it.
Kind of a mindset shift. I have a lot of clients that come to me just buying rental properties, and then we always set up a line of credit if we can to get them access to equity, and sometimes they end up carrying a high balance on the line of credit, and they like the idea that the monthly payment is interest only because the monthly payment is lower. But I'm trying to explain to them, yeah, but you're paying prime or prime plus half in most cases on their HELOC. Why don't we take that and convert that to a mortgage component at prime minus something, And then you can still have access to the HELOC for anything that you haven't used yet. And they can't wrap their head around the idea that, well, the monthly payment is higher. And I say, yes, the monthly payment is higher, but the principal
get
you're
back at
paying
the principal
down goes
reduction.
right back into your available credit. So you're actually only paying the interest. But it's just this thing about there's that payment coming out every month and people just like they get scared about it. So all of this, yes, it's a little bit more complicated. But when you start to shift your mindset around how you look at it and really what's coming back into your pocket at the end of the day, that's what matters.
And back in, after 08, 09 happened, prior to that, we'd have the amortizing rate here and the interest only HELOC rate being lower than the amortizing rate. Well, that all changed. And Dad sat down and came up with what he called the Fraser finagle. And I mentioned it in the book. And it's doing exactly that. You've got this interest only line of credit at 7%. And this is an option to conduct either before or after you finish the conversion process with the Smith Manoeuvre, is convert that interest only tax deductible HELOC to an amortizing mortgage at a lower rate of interest. Yes, there's a bigger payment to make each month because there's principal and interest. Even though it's a lower rate, it's bigger payment, but you pay down that principal on that tax deductible debt. You can borrow back that tax deductible debt and use that to help service the mortgage payment next month. So you're effectively paying interest only, just like you were on the HELOC, but at a lower rate.
So that was, if I don't mind, take a little bit of a sidestep a bit, because you've been hinting at it this whole call, but I don't know if we've actually touched on it. I've heard cash damming as one of the accelerators, but you've also hinted to the fact that there's several accelerators when leveraging the Smith Maneuver. Do you mind just covering what those are?
Yeah, so there's the debt swap, which we touched on. That is, I got the right financing in place. I have the ability to sell an investment portfolio for cash. Again, look at taxation, sell it for cash, pay down my mortgage, borrow it back, buy the same investment if I want, or buy a different investment. And I can accomplish this in a few days, maybe a week. There's cash flow diversion. If I've been investing, fortunately enough, $300 a month into my own investment program, where I'm buying stocks, bonds, whatever it is, I can, instead of investing that off my paycheck each month, first pay down my mortgage above and beyond my regular mortgage payment, make an extra payment of that $300. That becomes available, and now I get it invested. The more you pay down that bad debt, the faster it goes away. There's so cash flow diversion, the debt swap, prime the pump, which is a lot of times people will refinance in with the help of Nick, for example, an SMCP. They'll refinance into a mortgage that works for the Smith Maneuver, but they'll have significant equity in the home. So they'll have an immediately available limit on that line of credit they can pull out to invest right away. 25, 50, 300,000 bucks. Boom, I'm pulling that out. I'm getting invested. I'm priming the pump, getting invested a big chunk right now that has the longest period of time to grow. This is new borrowing. This is leverage because you're increasing your debt. So
that's the one accelerator. That's the one part that requires additional cash flow to service a lump sum.
Yeah. Most of the time it does. Sometimes it doesn't. Depends on the numbers, the values, all that stuff. But in any event, Nick's right. And then also there's the cash flow dam, which we talked about. If you've got a rental property held in a proprietorship or a home-based business, you can still take your revenues from that business, sell sweaters that you knit in your garage on the internet. Take the revenues, pay down your mortgage, pull it back out to service the expenses for that business. And lastly,
the only caveat there is you just, for that, you'd want to be like, you have to be super dialed in financially and be very organized. Yeah. And
then lastly, the drip accelerator, which is basically, I've got this investment portfolio. I'm in it for growth. What a lot of investors do is they say, you know what? I want to automatically reinvest my dividends and my distributions from the investment, right? Because I want growth. Well, you say, no, I don't want to automatically invest. I want to take my dividends in cash, monthly, quarterly, annually, whatever they are, take that cash, pay down your mortgage, pull it back out, and then buy the exact same stock that sent you that dividend in the first place. Again, you're making extra payments against your mortgage. The more you can apply against that mortgage, the faster it's gone. And the nice thing about this, you're sitting at home with your wife, you decide, you know what, let's not go out for dinner and a movie. I just want to stay at home. Oh, how much were we going to spend tonight? It's going to be $150. You know what? Let's spend it anyways, but we're going to make an extra payment on our mortgage. Right?
Love it.
Anything that you
Plus you win some points.
So anything you can find to make extra payments against your mortgage, it's going to be available to reborrow to invest.
Got it. I know we're wrapping up here, and I just got so many questions. I'll keep it to one before we wrap up, and it's about the rental damming. Nick, and I just want to this is like new concept, and I think my brain's hurting a little bit, so we might have to get in a one-on-one after this.
Sure.
But like if I have, let's say like, besides a Smith maneuver, if you just have a rental property with a HELOC like on it, you're saying like flowing that, or let's say you still have the primary residence, you're basically taking the rental income and you're paying it down on the primary residence's mortgage. Let's say it's $3,000, and now
Yep.
that's bringing up $3,000 on the HELOC, and then you're taking that $3,000 off the HELOC to pay the expenses on the rental property. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yep.
You correct. 100%. That was exactly right.
And
So,
so,
hey,
so where Nick was going with this negative cash flow on the rental side of things, the Smith maneuver, your mortgage payment reduces your mortgage balance by 1,000. You can pull $1,000 out to invest. Okay, remember that. Now you're implementing the cash flow down because you got a rental. On top of that $1,000 reduction from the regular mortgage payment, you're prepaying by another $3,000. So that's a total of $4,000 that gets reduced. That is made available. And if you don't have enough from your renters to cover all the expenses, you got that $1,000 that you were previously investing in securities. Maybe you can only invest $500 into securities somewhere, or ETFs or whatever. You've got the other 500, which can cover a shortfall in the rental expenses.
And what happens, Zach, is if we zoom out and we're like, let's look at this super simply. We've got good debt and bad debt, right? The good debt's the debt on our rental property, and the bad debt's the debt on our home. And we can use, but when we get that rental income, we can do whatever we want with it. So we use the rental income to smash down the bad debt, and we use borrowed funds to service the good debt. And then the first part of this process is like, let's just get rid of the bad debt as quickly as we can and convert it all to good debt. And obviously, we can eventually get debt free, maybe if you want to. But the first process is like, let's just focus on doing whatever we can to smash down that primary residence mortgage. And when you've got 1, 2, or 3 rentals, man, like you've got thousands of dollars. Like the rate at which you can do it is just so fast.
You just start running out of prepayment privileges at that point.
Yeah, I exactly, and that's why like this Scotia's great, because you got the 20/20, right? They'll give you 15% off the bat, but all you got to do is ask, and they'll give you 20. So Scotia's really good for this one. And if I could just say one thing, which is time, like if you go to any financial planner, they'll tell you to save, like, you actually should be saving 30% of your income for your future. Who has 30% of their income? I don't have 30% of my income. I think we're at a stage in just society where we have to get really creative about how we can leverage to get wealth in the future. And one of the things that drew me so much to the Smith maneuver was just that it's just a very creative way to create more wealth, just by optimizing the existing structures and cash flows we've got without taking on extra liability, what I perceive to be extra liability or extra cash flow commitments. And it's just I think it's more relevant now than maybe in the past. That's my view. When I read the book, I was like, oh man, I think it resonates with people or it doesn't, but I kind of went straight to it when I came across it.
Yeah, I really do appreciate, I'm sure we all do. Looks like we got a fair bit of people joining us on the live, so I really do appreciate you joining us, Rob and Nick. And I think if it's okay with you, Rob, maybe we can share like the link to your book in the chat box. And
dropped it in. I'm just buying it now.
Oh, perfect. And if we want to book a call, I don't know, Nick, you're taking calls, but yeah, maybe we can put your calendar, your contact info there too, because I'm sure there's a lot of.
I think what everyone might want to do is just contact Nick, because if you go to the website and buy the book with Nick's coupon code, there's a discount.
I wouldn't even know where that link is.
We'll get it back to you, Nick.
Yeah, we'll get it back, and we'll post it on the comments, so that way you guys have it. And then it probably makes sense to read that book, then chat with Nick. And yeah, I'm getting my call.
I just put Andrew's the in-house mortgage broker here. Andrew, I was not trying to step on your toes, buddy, and I'm happy to collaborate you on with you on this.
Okay, yeah, Andrew's booking a call.
I think we might make Andrew a Smith Maneuver certified professional. Yeah,
I mean, it's something I've been meaning to get a little more acquainted with. We'll chat more after this call, but someone even posted in the comments, it looks like they're from a different province. So I was going to suggest, okay, send me an email. I can connect you with Nick, and between the two of us, we'll be able to help you out.
Oh, 100%. So there, I just put my general Calendly link. There's no bells and whistles. You just click on it and it books into my calendar, and I'd be, obviously happy to chat to anyone that wants to have a chat. Yeah.
Awesome. It's not getting any easier to get ahead in life. So this is really great stuff. Great tips that most people can use, anyone with a primary residence mortgage, right?
And I think that's what I love the most about this is that it's using sort of like tools that are akin to other strategies that I've clients use. We'll like real estate investors at a certain level will use their trust agreement, or they'll use trust corporations in certain transactions. It's kind of the same concept. You're leveraging one for the purpose of another, and looking at what the tax benefit is or the tax savings is on at every step. So I feel like you're using similar or sort of like tools that are in the same vein as other tools that are typically used when you've reached a certain level. But this can be used for anyone who owns a home.
You hit the nail on the head. Like this is replicating the kind of strategies that like people that are wealthy, that have accountants and lawyers and are able to have more complex structures put in place, and it allows your everyday Canadians to actually replicate this gradually over a period of time, which you've nailed it. Like Rob speaks a lot to that point.
It's similar to some people maybe in the audience. It's similar to some insurance arrangements, with life insurance, where you borrow against the cash surrender value and then get it deductible that way. And so there's similarities if someone wants to wrap their head around it with that.
Is that another accelerator? Combine the two?
So I'm totally thinking already about how I'm going to combine this with infinite banking.
Yeah, and if you guys have any questions online, just drop your questions in the chat box. We're not going to answer them right now. We're just going to wrap up. But before I do, Jason, I wanted to put you on the spot. We'll go through maybe just the hosts here. Like Jason, what's your biggest takeaway from this event?
So I'd say my biggest takeaway because I've been looking into cash damming now for a couple months and moving a lot slower than I should have from apparently. My biggest takeaway is out of all the studying, because I'm a data junkie, my biggest takeaway is the importance of having the expert. And I think I say that in a lot of our calls. I pride myself on getting this stuff and understanding the numbers and really grasping it. But the truth is, having the expert who knows what they're doing and can just say, here, do this. I think, Rob, your visual was perfect on that. Will save you leaps and bounds, years or in hundreds or thousands of dollars on it. So that's really been my biggest takeaway is, if you don't understand it, that's okay. Find someone who does, because they'll help get you past that point far sooner than you ever do yourself. It's kind of like the same comparison of, do you do it now or do you wait 3 years? Well, it depends. But in this scenario, I think go get the expert. That's been mine.
Love it. Love it. Vedran, I know you got to hop off here. Do you want to share your... I
just want to say, it was great to meet you guys, Rob, Nick. Thank you for doing that. I personally wasn't aware that there's a Smith Manoeuvre certified professional, but it's nice to know that there is, because then you can send people
we need some more CPAs, man. I think you should join.
Yeah, well, we'll see, but we'll see. I have my wife. I got married last month. My wife might kill me if I start taking on more stuff. I have a hard time saying no to anything. But no,
I wasn't trying to put you on the spot.
No, I know, all good. I'm just saying it's great that I didn't realize that, again, there's like, you can go to experts directly for this who can then get you set up, because you guys are right that oftentimes, left hand doesn't talk to right hand. I'm the accountant who doesn't talk to the mortgage broker, who doesn't talk to the investment advisor, who doesn't talk to the insurance provider, so there's sometimes gaps then, right?
Yeah. That was kind of my takeaway. Like, all this stuff is great, but there's different professionals, and when you're working with someone who doesn't understand what the Smith Maneuver is, if I'm a mortgage broker and I'm working with an accountant or a lawyer who doesn't get it, they're just like shutting it down. They're like, oh, I haven't heard of it, I'm not comfortable, maybe you're gonna get sued, maybe it's not legal, whatever. And then I had an experience with Zach. We got on the call this week with one of Zach's clients, and they're one of my mortgage clients. And by getting on the same call and getting all the people together, we could actually talk through her goals and figure, okay, what makes sense? What's a roadblock? It turned out that she's not going to do a deal with Zach right now. She wants to take care of some other loose ends first. Then we're going to go and do the deal with Zach. So the more that we could kind of work together as professionals, if we can get everyone together, that would be awesome. So as a mortgage broker, I'm always happy when you put me in touch with your accountant or your lawyer, because instead of having these silos and playing broken telephone, if we can just hop on a call and talk about a specific topic, like doing the Smith maneuver, and if it makes sense for you, that would be great. So Smith maneuver, here's a quick example for investors who are in the acquisition phase. Maybe they don't want to be making a ton of prepayments because it's going to take away available cash for their next real estate property. Maybe they do, but we have to look through all of those numbers. If you're really tight on qualifying, you don't want to be doubling up your monthly payment, because then on your credit bureau, it's going to show your double payment, and that's going to jack up your ratios, and you're not going to qualify for that next rental. So if you only talk to the Smith maneuver guy, he might tell you to do it. If you talk to me, I'll tell you don't do it. If you talk to both of us, we'll probably say don't do it for a while, then do it once you run out of properties, right? I see Nick smiling.
I always, because I always speak to that point. I never get, unless absolutely required, I never get the client to double up their mortgage payment for that same reason. I always get them to do a manual prepayment, because that won't affect the credit bureau.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and to go back to what you were talking about earlier, that's the wonderful thing about this SMCP network is, you know, they're all trained. We've got mortgage brokers, investment advisors, accountants, etc., all in Toronto, and they know each other. They speak the same language, and so they can surround the client. And when I was an advisor, I used a mortgage broker account, and the clients loved it. They're like, oh, I don't have to explain anything to my accountant. I don't have to explain. You guys speak to each other. You guys understand each other, and so it's
we can all be the psychologist.
It's a great client retainer.
Yeah, funny enough, that's how this group started. Yeah, like we were getting questions on, you know, should I open a corporation? And I was just like, yeah, let's just get on a call with the mortgage broker, accountant, lawyer, and Jason, and answer the question. Right? You need everyone in the same circle. Melina, you go, and then I'll go, and then we'll call it. What was your biggest takeaway?
I think that my biggest takeaway was that I envisioned that it was one thing, and I was completely wrong. So I'm really glad that we delved into the nitty-gritty to fully understand all of the benefit. And I feel like I see it so much more clearly now, and how powerful this is. So I'm really excited to implement it for myself, and then share with all of my clients. So yeah.
Love it, love it. I honestly, like, mine's definitely similar. Like, I understood one thing, but I thought I knew what it was. Maybe I wasn't listening to your talk well enough there, Rob, at the event. But yeah, I just couldn't wrap my head around, okay, like, why am I gonna, you know, borrow money at higher interest on a home equity line of credit when I have a lower percent for mortgage? And where's that payment gonna come from to cover the HELOC? But now with adding in, oh, I like what you said, Nick, on the volume of interest. The volume's it's increasing, like almost like exponentially, right? Like as the mortgage goes down. So as the volume is increasing, it's freeing up extra principal. You're using that to cover the HELOC, plus you're getting the tax advantages, and ultimately just converting the bad debt to good debt, which is what, you know, Robert Kiyosaki himself talks about all the time. So at the end of the day, I really appreciate you guys jumping on, and we'll definitely have to do one of these in the future. So I think the next event, Jason, is coming up in September, right? Next month. We'll probably release the details in a little bit, but
yeah, MasterClass number 10. Make sure to set your calendar. We'll get all the details out to you shortly. The best way to be notified, leave those comments down below. Say we want in. Send us a direct message. We'll get you on the mail list so you get notified for the very next call. As always, thank you to all the panelists and all the experts for being here today. And if you ever have any topics that you really want to know, let us know. Drop that comment, or most importantly, share this with a friend. Until the next video, we'll see you on the next masterclass. As Zach mentioned, it'll be in September. Look forward to seeing you there.
I can't believe it's 10 already.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Nick. Yeah.
Okay, good night, guys. Rob,
night, guys.
Nick, thank you. Nice to meet you, man.
Thank you all.
Hey, Vedran.